Mummification secrets of the pharaohs. The ancient Egyptians were considered a very important cultural icon in the history of mankind. This is because they have excelled in many fields, in a striking and impressive way, such as astronomy, architecture, engineering, medicine, and many other fields. And even now there are secrets about their civilization. Modern science has not discovered all its technology and development into its secrets. They also left many traces of astronomical temples, solar calendar and many others, and are still standing to this day despite the passage of thousands of years, and are still standing. And this indicates the extent of their skill and superiority. Among these areas is their superiority in chemistry and medicine, and specifically their practice of the embalming process. Mummification is a very complex medical process that the ancient Egyptians were famous for, and through which they were able to preserve some mummified bodies for thousands of years. In fact, the mummification process is still shrouded so far with many questions, mysteries. And mysteries is the mummification process, a secret that no one knows its secrets at all. Is it more like the mystery of building the pyramids or other mysterious things for which the pharaohs were famous? Or is the details of the process known to scientists and researchers? And, most importantly, why were the pharaohs embalming the bodies of kings and queens? And is it possible in our current era to do a mummification process as the pharaohs used to do or not? The ancient Egyptians believed in the existence of life in the other world, and that death is not the end of human life, but the beginning of a new phase of life in the other world. But their belief in the concept of the afterlife was somewhat strange. It was thought ancient Egyptian. In order to be able to properly achieve life after death, he had to fulfill certain conditions. One of the most important of these conditions, for his body to remain after death, remains properly preserved and preserved in its form as it is, in order to be easy to identify the features of his body. And also his tomb is furnished and equipped with things that could be needed in the other world. And according to their beliefs, man was able to fulfill these conditions. So a person can return to life again through his preserved body and tools found in the cemetery. Once the conditions are not met, then the person will not be able to return to life in the other world. That is why Egyptians turned to the so-called mummification process. Mummification is a medical process carried out by priests and some specialists with the purpose of preserving the bodies of some kings and the wealthy from decomposition and rotting. The surprising thing is that they really succeeded. They were able to mummify corpses and dead bodies that lasted for thousands of years. At the outset, let us pose an important question. Is the mummification process of the dead pharaohs considered a secret and mysterious process that no one knows about? Indeed, not. It is widespread among most people that the mummification process is a very secret thing, and that it is something like with a magic recipe that no one knows about, nor about the way it works, nor about its steps. In fact, this statement is not true at all. So all the steps related to the process of mummification that the pharaohs used to follow were discovered and known steps, and the method and steps of embalming by scholars and specialists. They became able to simulate it just like what the pharaohs used to do. And if you want to know how the mummification process is done, all you have to do is prepare the tools for mummification. We will need a certain set of a hook and a sharp knife, and a bowl containing oil, honey wax, vegetable gum, flax, some wood shavings, incense, and a number of natural perfumes. in addition to palm wine and a group of herbs and natural substances that resemble spices. You will also need with all of the above some vessels made of limestone or calcite, and finally, a very large quantity of nitron salt, and I was able to provide all the tools, the previous materials. If you are now ready for the embalming process, any particular mixture or combination in the world is made up of two parts. The first part is the formula for mixing materials. This combination has an important effect and role, but some materials can be dispensed with or we can replace them with other alternatives. Part 2, the main part based on it all. The main element that we will not be able to dispense with or replace with any other alternative. And based on the above in the special formula represented in materials such as incense, perfumes and natural herbs. The main element based on the idea of embalming is the nitron salt. Nitron salt is a disinfectant and desiccant, and it is the main ingredient that the pharaohs used in embalming. Nitron is a chemical compound consisting of two types of alkaline salts, which are sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate. And the pharaohs used to get it from dried river basins or from some Egyptian cities such as the city of Wadi el Nitron, which was called the Valley of Salt in the past. Simply embalming can prevent cells from decomposing. This is by attacking the bacteria and decomposition enzymes with some substances that overcome them, such as the nitron salts. And if we can isolate the body against bacteria and enzymes, then we can keep it for a long period of time. As for the steps of mummification that were performed by the priests, so here it is about the next. They bring the body and lay it on a long table, then take the first steps, which are brain extraction. As we mentioned a while ago, that the basic idea in the embalming process is to prevent the body from decomposing. When looking at the brain, you will discover that it is made up of an enormous number of neurons, which unfortunately die and quickly decompose. This causes a problem for the people in charge of mummification. Thus, the brain must be extracted from the head. In fact, the method for extracting the brain is something a little harsh. At first they pound a long nail into the skull from the back, and then they perform a brain crushing process inside the skull. And then they turn the body over its face, and then they extract the remains of the brain through the hole they made with the skull. And through the nostrils as well. Then, they pump a quantity of vegetable gum into the skull from the same opening of the nail and the nose. This is so that they can prevent the head from degenerating internally. Consequently, the head became devoid of any degradable neurons. But is it over like this? Indeed, not. The human brain is not the only organ that degrades rapidly. There are still a number of remaining organs, such as the liver, intestine and other organs that contain their nature on digestive enzymes. Consequently, if they leave these organs present, these enzymes will begin to devour the body from the inside. That is why the priests began to get rid of the intestines by making a longitudinal opening in the left side of the body and extracting everything through it. But it was strange that they were extracting all of the internal organs except one. It's the heart. Because they believe that the heart is the seat of the soul and emotion, and that it has an important role in the other world. But you see, the members that took her out of the body, what were they doing with it? In fact, there was no member being left out. Each of the body parts was placed inside a bottle filled with nitron salt, as they believed. Members will begin to gather inside the body again in the afterlife and it will return. Each member has its own original place. Now, after embalmers have removed all the contents of the abdomen, they clean the internal cavity inside the body and wash it well. And then the body is ready for the second part of the embalming process, which depends specifically on nitron salt. Salt, in general, has a great ability to prevent rotting, and this is through its strong ability to eliminate bacteria. And when using nitron salt, the subject will be more effective, because the alkaline salts are either sodium carbonate or sodium bicarbonate. which makes this salt a predator to bacteria and enzymes. The embalmers fill the abdominal cavity with bags and linen rolls soaked with nitron salt in order to eliminate the bacteria and enzymes first. Secondly, in order to preserve the shape of the body and to maintain its streamlined shape more. And it becomes similar to the normal human form when it was full of organs. It is surprising that the task of nitron salt does not stop only at the linen rolls placed inside the body. Rather, the entire body is soaked in a large amount of nitron salt, almost like a bath of salt. The mummy remains in the salt bath for a continuous 35 days. And all this with the aim of preserving the outer skin of the body and gaining its immunity against bacteria and enzymes. After 35 days have passed, and as soon as the corpse is removed from the nitron salt, the existing alkaline salts will be able to absorb all the bacteria and enzymes in the mummy. And out of it a solid structure devoid of liquids at all. In the end, they can get the mummy without liquids, without bacteria, and without digestive enzymes. That is, yes, by putting the mummy in a salt bath for a long time. Get rid of all fluids, bacteria and enzymes, after removing all the internal organs that were in it. For all this will not make the mummy dissolve. But the smell of the mummified mummy is still not pleasant at all. Nitron salt fights decomposition, but it does not eliminate all odors. So they resort to one of the formulations for the embalming process that contains herbs and natural plants that carry acceptable smells. Then the priests pour a large amount of gum trees on the entire perimeter of the body from the outside and add a mixture of wax and aromatic oils. And it is massaged on the mummy in a manner similar to the current massage method. That is, yes, a mummy massage is done. Then comes the very famous step, which is to wrap the mummy in a large group of linen until it reaches the usual final shape. Then the mummy is taken and placed inside a group of intertwined coffins, and in most cases, the last coffin that contains the set of coffins of stones, and the first coffin of it is engraved with the king's image using certain colors. And one of the important steps during the embalming process is that the head of the embalmed must wear a specific mask while performing all the embalming rituals. This mask is the mask of Anubis, the god of embalming and the underworld, in the belief of the ancient Egyptians. And it is a mask in the form of an animal that resembles a dog and is completely black in color. Then the king's belongings are collected and placed in the cemetery, which he may need in the other world as they thought. These are like jewelry, treasures, valuable collectibles, furniture and clothes. The food containers, etc., and the amount of things that are placed in the cemetery are based on the person's stature and wealth. Especially if this person is a property or a member of the royal family. Then the cemetery is secured against thieves and aggressors by spreading some toxic chemical materials in certain places with the aim of preventing and frightening anyone from entering the place, and the priests leave the place and the cemetery is closed behind them forever and the mummification process of the mummy ends. Yes, the mummified mummy is not a complete corpse, as we explain, but this does not prevent the mummification process elaborate and impressive. Especially since the scientists were able to obtain from the newly discovered mummy to obtain samples of its DNA. As well as they were able to do some autopsies and to know the causes of death and their age at death. And special information about the life of the pharaohs in general.